Hello and welcome back to the William Gomes podcast. I am William Gomes and I am grateful to have you here. Today we turn to a concept that is central in psychoanalysis yet often misunderstood. It is a concept with a difficult name, one that can cause confusion if taken literally. The term is castration. In psychoanalytic thinking, castration has nothing to do with the body. It is not a physical act. Instead, it describes one of the most important psychological experiences in human life. It refers to the moment repeated in different ways throughout our development when we discover that we are not complete, that others are not complete, and that desire is woven through limits that we cannot avoid. In this episode, we will explore symbolic castration gently and clearly. We will look at how it shapes desire, identity, relationships, and our experience of the world. My aim is to help you understand why limits are not only necessary, but foundational to emotional life. Castration, in this sense, is not about loss or harm, it is about the recognition of reality. It is about accepting our human condition, a condition marked by incompleteness, vulnerability, and longing. Let us begin with the simplest version of this idea. Every infant begins life in a world where the caregiver seems all powerful. The caregiver provides food, comfort, and warmth. The infant does not understand the caregiver's limitations. To the infant, the caregiver appears complete, able to provide everything, able to prevent pain, able to fill every need. In this early experience, the world feels whole. There is no sense of lack. But as the child grows, something changes. The child begins to realize that the caregiver is not all powerful. They leave the room, they become distracted. They say no, they do not always understand what the child wants. They have their own emotions and desires. They may be tired, stressed, or unavailable. This moment of realization, this moment when the child sees that the caregiver is not complete, is the earliest experience of symbolic castration. It is not a traumatic event, it is a structural recognition. The child discovers that the world has limits, that others have boundaries, that desire cannot be fulfilled all the time. This recognition opens the door to subjectivity. It makes it possible for the child to become an individual, separate from the caregiver, able to form their own desires, thoughts, and identity. This early moment is connected to the introduction of the name of the Father, the symbolic authority we explored in the last episode. The name of the Father introduces the rules and boundaries that shape life in the symbolic order. It shows the child that there are things that cannot be done, things that are not available, and things that belong to others. Castration is the emotional and psychological effect of this symbolic introduction. It is the dawning awareness that life contains limits. Now, let us look at how castration shapes desire. Desire begins with lack. If we felt complete, if nothing were missing, there would be no desire. Desire arises because something is absent, something we cannot fully name, something we cannot fully reach. This lack is not a flaw. It is fundamental to being human. It is what gives life movement, curiosity, and intensity. Castration marks the moment when we become aware of this structural lack. Lacan's insight is that castration is what gives desire its shape. When we accept that life contains limits, desire emerges as a response to those limits. We long for things because they are not entirely ours. We pursue goals because they are beyond our reach. We fall in love with qualities that seem extraordinary precisely because they belong to another. Desire moves around the gap created by symbolic castration. Castration is also deeply connected to the phallus, the symbolic marker of value we explored previously. Before castration, the child imagines that someone possesses the phallus, that special quality of completeness. It may seem like the caregiver has it, it may seem like others possess it, but through castration, the child recognizes that no one is complete. No one has the phallus. The phallus becomes symbolic, not real. It becomes a signifier, not a possession. This is why castration is liberating. It frees the child from the illusion that completeness is possible. It frees them from the fantasy that someone else holds the key to meaning. It frees them from the pressure to embody perfection. In this freedom, they can begin to relate to others as subjects with their own lack, their own vulnerabilities, their own desires. Castration also influences how we experience authority, rules, and responsibility. When the symbolic limit is clear, people feel anchored. They understand the structure of relationships and social life. When the symbolic limit is unclear or inconsistent, anxiety often appears. Anxiety emerges when we cannot rely on stable boundaries. It emerges when the symbolic order fails to provide coherence. This is not a personal failure, it is a structural experience. Anxiety is what we feel when the symbolic limit is uncertain. Castration also plays an important role in love. Love becomes possible when both people recognize their own lack and the lack of the other. When neither partner expects the other to provide completeness, love becomes more compassionate. It becomes a meeting of two subjects who share vulnerability. It becomes a connection grounded not in perfection, but in the shared human experience of incompleteness. When someone expects the other to complete them, love becomes strained. The relationship becomes burdened by impossible expectations. Arguments arise not because the partner failed, but because completeness was expected where completeness cannot exist. Understanding symbolic castration allows for a gentler approach to love. It teaches us that relationships thrive when we release the fantasy of completeness. Castration also shapes ambition and creativity. Many people approach work, projects, or achievements with the hope that success will fill the gap they feel inside. They imagine that if they reach a certain milestone, they will feel whole. But once the milestone is reached, desire shifts, the emptiness returns. This is not a sign of personal inadequacy. It is a sign that castration is structural. No achievement can erase lack. Instead, creativity and ambition become healthier when they are pursued for their own sake, not as attempts to overcome castration. Understanding this principle can bring relief. It releases the pressure to become perfect. It softens the internal demands we place on ourselves. It allows us to approach goals with curiosity rather than desperation. It helps us appreciate the process rather than focusing solely on the outcome. Castration also shapes identity. Throughout life, we encounter moments when our sense of self is challenged. A role we relied on may change. A belief we held may no longer fit. A relationship may shift. A dream may be altered. These moments can feel like losses, but they are also moments of castration, reminders that identity is not fixed and that we are always becoming. Castration invites us to let go of rigid identifications and to open ourselves to new ways of being. Castration also appears in grief, disappointment, and change. These moments remind us that life contains limits, that we cannot control everything, and that loss is part of the human experience. But castration also opens space for renewal. When an old certainty falls away, something new can emerge. Castration invites us to grow, to reflect, and to deepen our relationship with life. One of the most important aspects of symbolic castration is that it is ongoing. It does not happen once, it happens throughout life. Each time we encounter a limit, each time we face a gap in knowledge or ability, each time we recognize that others cannot give us everything, castration reappears. This is not something to fear, it is part of being human. It keeps desire alive. It keeps relationships dynamic. It keeps our identity flexible. Understanding castration can also help us approach others with compassion. When we see someone struggling, we can remember that they too are dealing with limits. They too feel incomplete. They too carry unfulfilled desires. This recognition softens judgment. It helps us see the shared humanity beneath our differences. Castration reminds us that vulnerability is universal. It invites us to embrace our own vulnerability rather than hide it. It invites us to accept our limits rather than resist them. And in accepting them, we become more present, more grounded, and more open to connection. As we come toward the end of this episode, let us reflect on what symbolic castration ultimately teaches us. It teaches us that incompleteness is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of life. It teaches us that limits do not diminish us, they create the space for desire, creativity, and love. It teaches us that no one is whole and that this shared lack brings us closer, not farther apart. In our next episode, we will explore jouissance, a concept that describes a kind of intense enjoyment that goes beyond pleasure. Jouissance opens a doorway to understanding why people may repeat patterns that bring both satisfaction and suffering, and why desire sometimes leads us toward excess or conflict. It is one of the most powerful ideas in psychoanalysis and a perfect continuation of our exploration of castration. But for now, I hope this episode has helped you see symbolic castration not as a source of fear, but as a gentle reminder of what it means to be human. I hope it encourages you to embrace your limitations with compassion and to recognize that you are not alone in your incompleteness. We are all shaped by lack, and it is this shared structure that makes connection, creativity, and love possible. Thank you for listening. This is the William Gomes Podcast. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and I will speak with you again soon.